Yes, we have finally reached the disease chapters. Took us what, 12, 13, 14 weeks to get here, but we are finally here. The reason you took this course, so you could learn about diseases. Now, these last 5 chapters are going to be split up into the different systems. Today we're going to be talking chapter 16, which looks at the skin and the eyes, our outer tegument. Another chapter will look at the nervous system. Another chapter will look at the gastrointestinal system. Another chapter will look at what's left, cardiovascular. Another will look at genital urinary. So sit back, relax, because there's a lot of information packed into these chapters. If you'll also notice, you'll see that my face is not on here. Okay, doing this for a reason. So you focus on the information and not so much me. That, and also I don't want my head appearing right next to, a picture of an open wound. That's just too unnerving. So, going to split these lectures up. First couple of lectures for each chapter are going to be going over, background information, and then it's going to get into the mini lectures where it's each individual infection / disease will get its own little mini lecture. So that way you can go through and you can, focus primarily on what's going on. Now for these lectures, if you'll notice down the bottom left there, McGraw-Hill Education, I am using the publishers lectures slides for these instead of making my own. There's just a lot of information, and these lecture series for these chapters I think are put together rather well. Previous lectures, I thought they went a little too heavy-handed, which is why I did my own. Now, since I'm using theirs, you'll see that they have included what they refer to as the learning outcomes. Here's the 1, 2, 6 things that you need to know from this section of the chapter. I didn't put those into my lectures, but they're listed in the beginning of, or I believe it's either the beginning or the end of each chapter section. Now, when you're looking at our skin, you have to keep in mind that this is our first line of defense. Okay, the integument is a boundary. You look at it, there are no breaks, no openings in our skin. Its whole point is to keep stuff in, keep stuff out. Now the integument, that's not only our skin, but it's the hairs, the nails, all the different types of sweat and oil glands that you'll find everywhere. All of these work together to keep our internal organs safe. When you think about it, the different layers of our skin, the epidermis, the dermis, each has its own roles, each has its own reason for being. You look at our epidermis and the different layers there. As the cells migrate from the underlying dermal layers, that zone between the epidermis, dermis, where all of our skin cells originate, you'll see that as they are pushed further and further out, across the boundary, becoming part of the stratum corneum, the cells will actually cease to be living cells as more cells divide via mitosis underneath them and push that cell further and further away from the stem cell line. As they are being pushed further and further out, the cells will start to make more and more of a protein-based compound known as keratin. As the keratin levels begin to accumulate, the cells will slow down metabolically, they will flatten out, and, well, they'll die. So what you look at as your skin, that outer surface, is actually dead cells. Dead cells that have lost all their internal organelles, have lost the majority of their fluid, and all of that has been replaced by keratin. Since the cells are constantly being replaced underneath, new cells are constantly being made throughout your life. These old cells get sloughed off. Every time you scratch, every time you brush up against something, every time wind blows across, you lose skin cells. And if you look over at the figure there on the right, in the little sub-picture there, they show a little electron micrograph of the skin and a hair follicle. And you'll notice the little orange things. Those are the bacteria that are growing on your skin. As you slough and shed, well, as the chunks of skin float off, fall off, along with them goes hundreds and thousands of bacteria. Side note, they say that the dust that accumulates in your house, in your rooms, in your dorm rooms, the majority of that dust is not dirt from outside, it is actually skin cells from you, your dog, your roommates, your family, whatever. When you look at the underlying dermis is not dead cells. This is very vibrant, a lot going on here. There's different tissues connected together by different types of connective tissue. They're going to be wrapped with fibroblasts, collagen, holding things together so that as you pull on it, as you bend, as you stretch, the skin can stretch and then return to its normal shape. Now, as we age, the underlying fibroblast cells and the collagen will wear out. The skin will lose some of its elasticity, hence you get sagging skin and wrinkles. Now, swimming through all these different tissues, in between the collagen and everything else, are going to be immune cells, macrophages, mast cells, things that are on patrol looking for anything not you. Anything not you that would signify an infection. In this dermis, you're going to have all of the network of blood vessels, lymphatic vessels. Now, a lot of times students kind of wonder why we have blood and lymphatics. Well, the bloodstream delivers the nutrients. Bloodstream also delivers liquid, fluid. In that fluid will be different serum proteins and nutrients. The thing is, it delivers and then stuff seeps out in the capillary beds. So the volume of blood that's delivered to tissues is always going to be greater than the volume of blood that returns to the heart. So this fluid will accumulate in the tissues, needs to be recaptured, needs to be removed. That's what the lymphatic system's all about. It drains the tissues. Now, as it's draining tissues, any proteins, any molecules, signal molecules, pieces of cellular debris that's floating between the tissues will also drain away. drain to the nearest lymph nodes, where the B cells, the T cells, and other macrophages are all waiting to be activated. Now in the dermis, as I said, it's the dead keratinized cells. But to keep things nice and pliable, you're going to have different types of sebaceous oil glands throughout the body. These oil glands are secreting what is known as sebum. Sebum is a waxy oil that sticks to our skin, keeps it from drying out, because dry skin cracks. Cracks in the skin will allow bacteria to penetrate to the epidermis. Or, I'm sorry, will allow them to penetrate the epidermis to get to the underlying dermis. Sorry, had a bit of a brain fart there. So what you end up with is these oily secretions that start in the dermis, pass through the epidermis, through the glands, and then wind up on the surface of the skin, keeping it somewhat soft and pliable. In the sweat, along with the sebum, which, as I said, you see here below, keeps the pH low, or keeps, has a low pH, so it keeps the surface of the skin slightly acidic. Most bacteria don't seem to like slightly acidic. Also supplies, which is weird to say, supplies lipids, which will act as nutrients. Nutrients for the same bacteria, the bacteria that like that lower pH. These are going to be our microflora that we want to keep growing on our skin, because if they're growing there, they will outcompete any transients we may come into contact. Because remember, the transients, better chance of them being pathogenic than our normal microflora. Along with the sebum, we're going to see that they're going to be antimicrobial peptides, small proteins that have antibacterial properties. They get inserted in the membranes of the bacteria. They interfere with membrane integrity. Stuff leaks in, stuff leaks out. Bacteria die. So the whole point of the sebum, the antimicrobial peptides, is to keep the number of bacteria we have growing on the surface of our skin at a manageable number. We want some there, but we don't want to be overgrown. On the surface of our skin, we're also going to have the sweat, an acidic fluid that we secrete as a means of thermal regulation. As the sweat evaporates, it pulls off heat, helps through evaporative cooling to keep our body temperatures from going too high. Turns out that the low pH and the high salt is also antimicrobial. And within the secretions are going to be what is known as lysozyme. Remember, rule of thumb, anything ends in zyme means it's an enzyme. What prefaces zyme tells you what it does. Lysozyme is an enzyme that lyses bacteria. We'll see it has a greater effect on, I believe it is gram-negative. Or gram-positive. No, it's gram-positive, sorry. So it goes through and it starts breaking down peptidoglycan. Starts cutting the bonds between the peptidoglycan strands. So you have a weakened cell wall, means that the cells will now